Good afternoon, everybody. Happy New Year. We are back with our second Geico Google Hangout of the year for men's basketball. I'd like to remind everybody that today's NEC Google Hangout is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes or more could save you, or 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com for more details. I'm back for what appears to be now an annual conversation with one of the NEC's top bloggers. I'd say he's probably top 5 in the world on NEC knowledge right now. His name is Ryan Peters, also known as Pioneer Pride on Twitter. That's Pioneer_Pride. He's a key part of the Big Apple Buckets franchise, just exploding with mid-major content these days, not only of the NEC, but the America East, the MAC, the Patriot, and the Ivy Leagues. Before we get to Ryan and get into what's happened in the NEC so far this year and what we can expect, let me go through his resume for a second. Ryan's a Sacred Heart grad. He was in all his glory back in 06 and 07 when the Pioneers made it to the NEC title games. Didn't get over the hump, but he's hoping that this might be the year. You may have seen him on the annual Bloggers Roundtable. It's NEC Social Media Day each year. We'll also kind of throw him on an NEC TV broadcast every now and then also. One thing, though, Ryan, I got to take exception to something on your bio on your website, which I'm not sure you wrote, but I'm going to read this verbatim. It says, currently resides in Maryland, where he's found in front of his laptop on most winter nights watching grainy internet feeds of various NEC games. Hey, pal, we're in HD now, okay? This is the big time. That has to be updated.
It's probably time to update that bio, because admittedly I did write that, but it was about 3.5 years ago when the NEC Front Row was just launching. And actually it was before it launched, and I was relying on the schools to provide the broadcast. So yeah, it was grainy then, but it certainly isn't now. You guys, Front Row does a tremendous job with the HD and whatnot.
All right, I'm just messing with you. Okay, thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it. Start of conference play is coming up this Saturday, so there's plenty to cover the last couple of months. Let's start with, first thing I want to do is let's talk about the composition of the NEC this year. We knew going into the season that the league is really starting a new cycle, so to speak. We've lost so many of the key players and names that NEC fans have become accustomed to hearing. I'll go through some of them. You know, Julian Norfleet, Rashad Wack, Carvel Anderson, Alex Francis, Kenny Ortiz, Jason Brickman, Sidney Sanders, Ben Mogford, Lateef Rivers. These were guys that were the backbone of the NEC the last 4 years or so. And when we go into this season, I put out some numbers earlier in the year that 35% of all players on NEC rosters are freshmen and 46% are newcomers, almost 60% underclassmen. Knowing that there's been a roster turnover, sort of a changing of the guard, give me your assessment of the first 2 months of the year in non-conference play.
I would, if I had to summarize in one word, I would say encouraging. November was a rough month, but like you said, a lot of underclassmen are expected to take on bigger roles with all the graduations and the turnover on most of these rosters. A lot of the teams that have been near the top of the NEC, the Wagners, the LIUs, had to pretty much turn over the roster completely. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen. The conference has been much better in the month of December. They've had some big wins, FDU beating Towson, St. Francis of Pennsylvania knocking out a Big Ten team for the first time in conference history. I know you're excited about that. It's been more encouraging. Bryant had a couple really good road wins at Army and Denver. So I think the league has played a lot better in December, and it's just showing how much better and more mature this freshman talent and sophomore talent's been for a lot of these coaches.
With the youth movement, so to speak, is there a built-in advantage, say, for a team like St. Francis U that returns virtually their entire team, or even a St. Francis Brooklyn that has some of their key guys back?
I think so. I absolutely. I think the Red Flash have definitely benefited from having 100% of their possession minutes coming back. Rob Krimel's told me so, that the experience, the continuity, they're a much better defensive team. I mean, that team is defending at a level they haven't defended in the past decade. They're one of the league leaders in defense now. They're giving up about 98 points per 100 possessions, which is very good. They're turning opponents over, and a lot of it has to do with experience and communication. Being able to rotate to spots quicker, being able to double team and pick up defenders, pick up guys on the offensive end. So I think it definitely has been an advantage up to this point for them.
So everybody's talking about parity this season. I guess every season it gets talked about, but this season it's I think a little more for real.
Yeah.
How many wins do you think it's going to take to win the conference this year?
I wouldn't be surprised if there ends up being a tie and we have to apply some kind of tiebreaker in first place. But I'm thinking right now 12-6 would probably get you a first place, at least a tie. Maybe you lose a tiebreaker, but I'd say probably 13 wins is just about what you need at this point. I don't think you need to go 14-4 in this league because there's not going to be an easy night for any of these teams.
We talk about it, but I did some research, and you have to go back to over 10 years or 11 years ago to find the last time a team didn't win 14 games in this league to win the league. It was 12-6 back in 03-04. So history's not with you on that.
Yeah.
But if there's a year, I agree with you. This could be the year because there may not be that much of a difference between 1 and 10, right?
I agree. I mean, I'm sure we're going to talk about this later on, but it's all about basically getting a top 4 seed and getting a home game in the first round of the NEC tournament. And I legitimately believe that there are 8 teams right now that could do that. So that speaks to how wide open this league is. There isn't much of a difference between Team 1 and Team 8, in my opinion.
Let's take a look at the NEC preseason poll for a second, if I can get this up here. Mm-hmm. There we go. All right, so you're looking at it. So St. Francis Brooklyn was number 1, and a central team that's had some it's struggled a bit in the non-conference season. But what I really want to talk about to start is the teams at the bottom of this, the 8, 9, and 10 teams. You look at them and look at their non-conference results, and your first thing you think is they look anything but teams that will finish at the bottom of the standings. Mm-hmm. Which teams do you think exceeded expectations in non-league play?
I mean, obviously, I have to reference Sacred Heart first and foremost. I think Anthony Latina getting Kane Broom, who's been a fantastic freshman. I'm sure we're going to talk about him more. But also getting the Hofstra transfer Jordan Allen, getting those 2 guys into his rotation. I really believe this is the best 8-man rotation Sacred Heart has had since those 2006, 2007, 2008 teams that you referenced when we're talking about Corey Hassan, Joey Henley, Ryan Litke, Drew Shubik, those teams. Because Latina has now a terrific blend of players. He has passers, he has shooters, he has slashers, he has big men who could defend the rim. So I think they've certainly exceeded his expectations. But all it took was a couple players to insert into that rotation. But then you also can't ignore Greg Herenda's Knights. I mean, they've been terrific as well. As my partner John Templon alluded to in our power rankings we put out this morning, they're such a well-coached team. They don't turn the ball over much on offense. They avoid the mid-range jumper, which is one of the most inefficient shots in college basketball. They're either going to shoot a 3 or attack the rim, and they've been pretty efficient doing that. And Herenda plays to the strengths of his teams. They're tremendous in transition, so they're always going to try to run the floor, get easy baskets, utilize their athleticism, whether you're talking about Marquise Towns, Darian Anderson, and then the three-point shooters and Mustafa Jones and Matt McDonald. They're a team that I think, right now we have them 5th in our power rankings. We have Sacred Heart 4th. Both those teams, I think, could definitely earn a home game in the first round of the NEC tournament. And I don't think anyone in October ever could envision that.
Yeah, you have 2 teams there, one picked 9th, one picked 10th. You could look at Sacred Heart and say at the beginning of the year that at least they had a nucleus of kids coming back that are seniors, your Glowiaks and Gaetano, kids that have been around a bit. But you look at FDU, and it's they lost Sidney Sanders, and their best players are all freshmen and sophomores over there, or newcomers. And to do that, I just think what they've done in non-conference is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, Herenda's my coach of the year right now, and granted, it's only been about 12, 13 games, but I mean, I'm sure we're going to do mid-season awards on Big Apple Buckets in another week or 2, and right now, Herenda's my coach of the year, just with what he's done with all the underclassmen talent. I mean, Matt McDonald's playing at such a high level these days. He barely had a scholarship, a couple Augusts ago. He was ready to go to prep school for a year because no one would offer his 12th scholarship on the team. Coached up there, he's a junior system and didn't really do much else. He's a much more efficient player now under Herenda. So, I give all the credit to him and Bruce Hamburger and that coaching staff. They've done a tremendous job.
Absolutely. Take a team. Let's take a look at LIU, another team, young guys, 3 freshman starters. Rough start, played a tough schedule. came on strong in December, won 4 games in a row. Where do you assess them at this point?
I mean, I would consider the progress ahead of schedule at this point. I know Jack Perry, he wanted to kind of start fresh, a couple of guys that he was going to maybe count on coming into this year. I think it was for the better because you throw the freshmen into the fire, Fredrickson and Hermanson and Nurazana. These guys are playing big time minutes, and that's going to come in really handy 2-3 years from now. But they've offensively, they look to be a really terrific team. And Jarrell Martin's helped. Jarrell Martin's actually matured into one of the better defenders in the league too. He's a very good on the ball perimeter defender at this point. They have something going at LIU right now. I'm sure Jack is very happy with the progress that his freshmen have shown so far.
Okay, so we've gone through some of the surprising teams. Without getting to your predicted winners, we'll do that right at the end. We'll tease everybody. What teams do you think, though? Who do you consider your contenders this year?
I mean, I have to start with when I wrote the preview for ESPN, I put St. Francis Brooklyn at the top, so I'm going to stick with them. I know they struggled in the month of November. Brent Jones was struggling a little bit, but now he's playing a lot better. He's distributing the basketball. His turnover rate's down. And Jalen Cannon's the best player in the league, in my opinion, at this point. He's a double-double machine. I really think right now they're one of the contenders. They're not great at shooting the basketball. They really do miss Ben Mockford a lot, but they have other strengths. They have a lot of slashers in the team that could get to the rim. Brent Jones is a guy you want him to have the ball in his hands late in the game. Jalen Cannon's also a very good post player. And they have some really good athletes in the defensive end, Kevin Douglas, Amdi Fall. Hopefully that both of them can stay healthy for the conference season, but they're very good at defending, protecting the rim. So I think Glen Brake has a good balance. And then of course, St. Francis of Pennsylvania, they've been tremendous in the non-conference. They have the continuity that we talked about before. Earl Brown is playing at an incredible level at this point. He's averaging about 18 points, 18.7 rebounds per game in his last 9 games. He's been really good. Malik Harmon's been the steady point guard we expected. Ronnie Dritton, I think he's going to get better now that the lineups are going to get a little bit smaller on the NEC side. I think he could be a smaller front court as opposed to the more athletic front courts when you have to take on a Texas or a Cincinnati. He's going to get a lot better in the high post, utilizing that. Right now, they'd be my top 2 contenders at this point, and everyone else below them, there's some kind of significant question mark before I could confidently say that they would be like a 1 or 2 seed in this league.
All right, so give me the sleeper team then. Who's in that mid-pack maybe that you think could come out?
Well, I already talked about them, Sacred Heart and Fairleigh Dickinson, but I mean, can we really call any of these teams a sleeper at this point, given all the parity and the wide openness of the league?
All right, then let's talk about a couple of these teams then. I want to try to hit everybody.
Yeah.
You can never count out Robert Morris. I mean, there's 7 years of unprecedented success in this conference, and there's absolutely talent there. But yet they're another team that's dealing with some roster turnover heading into this year.
Yeah, Robert Morris is one team that I can't really figure out. But to be fair, I couldn't figure them out in the last non-conference season either. They were 5-10 going into the conference season last year, and then they on the back of Carvel Anderson, it seemed like, and Anthony Myers-Pate, playing a terrific point guard, they won 14 of 16 games in the conference and won the regular season championship. So you can never count out an Andy Toole team. I do have my concerns with them, and I know Andy has been very vocal in the post-game press conferences, always entertaining, about whether they could play for 40 straight minutes, if they could commit on the defensive end. They're gonna be in the mix. I don't know if they're gonna win the league, and I could probably lump Mount St. Mary's into that mix as well. They're a team that they've had some really questionable results in the non-conference, but then they beat a Norfolk State, which is a pretty good team, and they've played well in spurts. But I think J-Man Christian is still trying to figure out his rotation. Andrew Smithers just came back, and I know talking to people inside the program, they consider him to be the best player on that team right now. But he's only 3 games deep into his Mount St. Mary's career, so it could take him a while to get a little acclimated to the NEC. And I think he's got Junior Robinson running the point. He's playing about 75% of Mount St. Mary's minutes as a freshman point guard, so that's always a challenge. But he's been pretty good. You can never count those 2 teams out. But right now, I think right now I project them to play 500 basketball in the league, but I'd probably take the over on that if I was really betting money on it, to be honest with you.
I mean, they've closed so well the last 2 years, Mount St. Mary's. I kind of like their team. I like Smithers and watching him play in, limited games so far. Can't count them out. What about Bryant?
I've always loved Bryant. I think this is a league where it's young coaches, young energetic coaches. So I think Tim O'Shea doesn't get talked enough about as being a great coach in this league, but he really is. Like I love that how he built Bryant up from nothing, the Division I transition, and of course they had a couple rough years in the first 3 or 4 years of their D1 existence, but he's done such a tremendous job building that team into now an annual contender. He needs to figure out his rotation too. De'Ami Starks is one of the best players in the league. He could score. He's averaging, I believe he's averaging 19 points a game at this point. Best three-point shooter in the league, in my opinion. O'Shea needs a couple other guys to step up and become that Corey Maynard or become that Alex Francis. Daniel Garvin has struggled a little bit as a sophomore. Hunter Ware has all the talent in the world, and I projected him in the beginning of the year as an all-rookie team guy. He's still kind of getting his footing. He had a couple really good games, but he's been inconsistent, as you'd expect from most freshmen. So I think he needs to kind of figure out that lineup. They're a little bit soft in the interior. They do miss Alex Francis, so they're trying to figure it out at this point, but I would never count them out. I picked them third in the power rankings, so obviously I'm higher on Bryant than most, and I think I've been that way since the offseason.
Here's another team, a team I've seen up close this year is Wagner, a team that I really like their young talent, what they're doing there. And it was going to be hard for them this year considering who they lost from the team. But do you see Wagner picking up steam this year?
I picked them ninth in the power rankings, and I think they're going to. I think they have a chance to make the tournament, but I don't know if they're going to make too much noise. And granted, they're a team that on some nights they're going to be a really tough out, especially at home. Playing that Bashir Mason style ball pressure in your face kind of defense. But they're going to go through the lumps because they're depending on guys like Henson and JoJo Cooper. They're giving big time minutes to their sophomore front court, where it's Eamon or Greg Sinat, Nolan Long. So I think they're going to struggle a little bit. They're going to have their moments. They may win 7, 8. Maybe, I guess, upside they could win 9 games, but I just don't see it right now. But I think the future is bright, definitely in Staten Island. Bashir had to kind of tear that thing down completely because you were talking about Lateef Rivers and Kenny Ortiz and those guys leaving. They had a tremendous senior class last year, so it's not very easy to kind of just pick up and rebuild on the run like that. It takes a little bit of time, and I think it's going to take a year and a half for Bashir to bring this team back to annual contention.
And finally, let's talk a little bit about Central Connecticut. We have a player who stepped up as a star this year, in Matt Mobley, who was all rookie last year. They've struggled in the non-conference, but as was written, when you face Central in league play, it's a tough game. I think they can beat anybody in this league. And again, anybody. To me, the 1 to 10 difference is so little that everyone has a good chance of making this tournament.
Yeah, I talked to one coach, and he told me off the record, he's like, I don't care what Central Connecticut's non-conference record is. I'm never going to take a Howie Dickerman coach team for granted, because they're going to come at you. They have some talented athletes. You mentioned Matt Mobley. Brandon Peel, I feel, is one of the most underrated players in the league. He's one of the best rim protectors in the league. He can rebound the ball. He can block shots. They still have some talent there. And granted, they've struggled quite a bit, and anyone would struggle if you lose a guy like Kyle Vinales, and also you lose Matt McMillan, who's a very underrated point guard, to injury. I know his timetable for return is still questionable. Hopefully they get him back soon, but I don't think any of the coaches are going to take Dickerman's team lightly. They're going to come at you. They're going to play 100% every night, and they definitely won't be an easy win for any team.
No, I agree. I'm a big fan of Brandon Peel, too. I think he's a really good player. What 2 teams are there out there that maybe this is not their year to win it all, but you look at next year and say they may have a shot?
I think it's FDU and LIU at this point, just because they're giving so many minutes to all these underclassmen, and they're going to have their ups and downs for sure. But I think they have the talent to be a team that maybe next year they're going to be contenders in the league. And that's not, I do believe that FDU could actually pick up a top 4 seed in this league, come March. but I think they're going to be better positioned next year, with Matt McDonald and, Towns and Anderson and all their freshmen, Earl Potts. They're going to be a really good team. And LIU, with the kids from Iceland, Nurazana. I think, once Nurazana figures out not to foul as much, he's going to be very good in this league. He's just got such a big 6'7", physically imposing body. It's going to be very difficult to guard. I would look to those two teams to be two teams that their future is bright. I would look to them to be like a near contender in 2015 and 16.
How's that Big Apple buckets traffic from Iceland these days? Are you picking up some?
You'd probably have to ask John about that. I don't know. He looks at the site stats far more than I do. Maybe he's looking at the international numbers, but I couldn't give an answer on that.
All right, let's go to players now. Let's break down your non-conference all-NEC team based on the first 2 months of the season. Who's your 5?
Okay, well, 3 of them are obvious, and they were 3 preseason picks: Jalen Cannon, Earl Brown, and Dami Starks. I don't think there's any question at what those 3 have done. They've lived up to the expectations that we had on them, the lofty expectations we've had on them. The other 2, Brent Jones, he's played a lot better lately. I would look to him as the 4th guy, and then the 5th guy. It feels weird to put a freshman in there, but I have to put Kane Broom in there right now because he's been tremendous. And I know he had a slip up against Yale recently, but before that, he's been everything that Anthony Latina has asked for and then some. He's been one of the best combo guards in the league. He could handle the ball. He could create opportunities for teammates. He could get to the rim. He's a very good jump shooter. He's been tremendous. And right now I put him. Because there are a couple other guys who have been a little inconsistent, I put Kane Broom as my 5th guy, and that may be a little controversial, but I like that. I like that top 5.
Who's your next couple off? First few off.
Matt McDonald is one guy. He's struggled a little bit the last couple games. He's been very efficient scoring the basketball, and I know John expected him to take that next jump from being a role guy to being the guy, and I was a little more skeptical, but he's kind of lived up to the billing. He's a player who I think's been very good at this point. And then Rodney Pryor, I don't think anyone knew what to expect with him. He's been off injured for the last 2 years, but he's come in and has been one of the most efficient 3-point shooters in the league, shooting 45% from 3, averaging 14 points a game. I don't think anyone expected that. And then I guess if I had to pick one more guy, Matt Mobley would be the 3rd guy off that list because he's 2nd in the league in scoring at 18 points per game. He's made up for the absence of Vinales by basically doing his best Kyle Vinales impersonation. Their stats are pretty similar when you compare Vinales' numbers from last year and Mobley's numbers this year.
With so many freshmen getting meaningful run this year, this could be more difficult than in years past. Who are your 5 all-rookie choices?
Yeah, that is a tough question. I think the no doubt about it's right now are obviously Kane Broom, Elvar Fredrickson. He's done a terrific job running the point for Jack Perry's team. Marquise Reed, he's won NEC Rookie of the Week twice. He's very good at creating his own shot. He doesn't really need much separation to get his shot off. It reminds me a little bit like Shane Gibson in that regard, just silky smooth from behind the arc. And then 2 other guys, Darian Anderson's played really well for Glenn Herenda. He's playing big-time minutes, so obviously the coaching staff trusts him. He's playing like 30 minutes a game, and he's done really well. He's a stat stuffer. He gets rebounds. He can dish out the ball. He gets steals. And then the 5th guy, no one's really talked about this guy, but I really like JoJo Cooper. I know Bashir, he was comparing Cooper to Kenny Ortiz in the offseason, and you're thinking, well, Kenny Ortiz, he was a great point guard, very great defender, very good at managing the game, kind of guy you want with the ball in his hands late. JoJo Cooper's done a tremendous job this year. His assist rate is nationally ranked according to Ken Pomeroy. He gets to the free throw line. A 6'1" freshman, with his size, and he's shooting 47% from the floor. That's pretty good. So I would put him in my all-rookie team right now.
And who's just off that list? A bunch of guys, right?
Yeah, Nurazana I would put there. Marquise Towns has been pretty good for Greg Herenda. Junior Robinson, I mentioned him earlier. He's playing 75% of Mount St. Mary's available minutes. He's been very good at the point guard position for Jamian Christian. Elijah Minnie's had his moments. Corey Henson as well. There's like 6 or 7 guys that you could make an argument for to kind of slide into that fifth and final all rookie team.
Who's your favorite player to watch in the league?
I'll give you 2 guys. Because I watch a lot of Sacred Heart, obviously. I love the old school point guards, so I have to go Phil Gaetano. I just you talk about jump shooters who have a quick release. Well, Phil Gaetano has a quick release with his passing. He sees the passing lane, he sees the open teammate like a second before most players will see it, and it's so much fun to watch him kind of fit that ball into a tight spot, create an opportunity for a teammate. He's such a cerebral player, so I just love watching him play. And then my second guy is another senior, Jalen Cannon. I mean, he's a beast on the boards. I love his tenacity. Coaches have told me off the record, Cannon's a guy who he gets rebounds out of his area that he has no business getting. And so it's so fun watching him just go after rebounds on the offensive side of the glass. But also, his shooting, his efficiency scoring the basketball, it's improved over time. He's extended his range now. He can shoot 3-pointers. And it's kind of funny, mention a guy like Cannon, he's averaging 14 points a game. You almost want him to be more selfish shooting basketball, so he's so efficient. He's only averaging 11 shots per game. But as good as he is, you just want him to take on more double teams and try to score more points to help his team out. But he's a fun player to watch because he's such a team-oriented guy, and he's just he's relentless on the backboards.
Yeah, I mean, as long as he stays healthy, he'll break the NEC rebound record, with room to spare this year. So, yeah, he's one of my favorites too. So that's good. And Gaetano, I'd like to get him on a hangout at some point this year just to get into the mindset of the pass first point guard. We did that with Brickman last year, and I like talking to those floor general types. So, what about some underrated players? Give me some glue guys, guys if you're a coach you want to have on your roster. Maybe not to get you 15 points a game, but they're going to help you win.
Well, we talked about one guy already. Brandon Peel's one guy. No one really talks about him, and he's grabbing 9 rebounds a game. He's blocking 1.5 shots. He's a guy who will take a charge in the post. He's a pretty good defender, but he just doesn't score the ball a lot, and so his name doesn't get mentioned as being one of the better players in the league. Jordan Allen, he's like I talked about Sacred Heart's rotation earlier. He's been perfect for that rotation. He's a limited player, no doubt. He doesn't have a ton of range, but he's a very smart player, and he knows his strengths and he knows his limitations. And his strengths are attack the rim, and he's shot for a high percentage this year. He's very good with both hands around the rim. He's a versatile defender. He could guard on the perimeter. He could guard in the post. Those are 2 guys, and then he struggled a little bit, but I've always liked Joe O'Shea. He's a guy that he thrives when the rotation's going well. So I think Tim O'Shea needs to figure out that rotation, and once he gets his 7 or 8 guys that he's comfortable with, I think Joe O'Shea is going to get better as the conference season goes along. But he's another guy who could stuff the stat sheet. He's a very good rebounder for his size, 6'5", can play on the perimeter. Those are 3 guys that I don't think get really much hype, but I'd have them on my team any day of the week.
I'll give you 3 I came up. I had some of yours too when I was trying to think of this. I'll give you Greg Graves on a Mount,
Yep.
Greg Brown on St. Francis U, and Kevin Douglas for Brooklyn.
Yeah, I like Greg Brown, for example. People in that program consider him to be the best perimeter defender on that team, and he's probably one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. Rob Krimmels told me that he's a guy who's going to be guarding the De'Ame Starks and the Kane Brooms and the Matt Mobleys of the league. He's going to be on the best perimeter defender each night, and he takes pride in his defense. He was a co-captain as a sophomore, so that shows you the maturity level that he plays at. So I do like Greg Brown as a nice under-the-radar guy too.
Yeah, he's good. I like that whole team. They know their roles on that team,
Mm-hmm.
and they execute. So that's a fun team to watch for me. Give me the single most indispensable player to his team. If they lost this guy, it would be rough going.
I could probably pick any one of the all-conference teams that all-conference guys that I just selected. I guess, it'd probably be the top 3 that I cited, either Jalen Cannon, De'Ame Starks, or Earl Brown. If one of those guys went down for the respective team, it would be very difficult it'd be impossible to make up their production. Bryant really doesn't have a prolific scorer to replace Starks, and Starks is just so good. He's become a much better he's become a much better scorer. He used to be a great shooter when he was a sophomore, but now he could score the basketball. He'll attack the rim. He'd be impossible to replace for Tim O'Shea. And Jalen Cannon, we know how good he is. He deserves a double team in the low post. You lose a presence like him on the rebounding and the rim protection. It would just be near impossible to make up for that deficit.
Guy like Earl Brown is a guy who just seems to get better and better every year. He's made leaps each season. What about a most improved guy? We talking Matt Mobley?
Yeah, I think he's a no-brainer at this point. I would pick him because he went from a guy who really didn't score all that much, and granted they didn't need him to score because Vinales was on the team and they had Matthew Hunter and guys like that. And also too, he injured his wrist last year, so I think he was struggling with his outside shot a lot. But I mean, when you jump up to 18 points per game, and he's been fairly efficient doing it, he hasn't been he hasn't been that much of a volume scorer. I think he's easily the most improved at this point.
Let's go to the best single game performance this year by an individual. Who is it? I have some ideas. What do you think?
That's a really good question. There's a couple that come to mind. I know Matt McDonald. He had a 29.8 rebound performance at home against Princeton. He was terrific. Kane Broom had I'm trying to remember which game it was. I think it was New Hampshire, where he had 23 points on 11 shots.
Yeah, 10 for 11 from the field that game.
Yeah, I mean that's ridiculous. I mean, Jalen Cannon, how many double-doubles has he had to this point? You could probably pick one of those.
Right.
I mean,
yeah, I think he's had 5 double-doubles in a row now, so.
Yeah.
Peaking.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of guys. I mean, what do you think?
I had Kane Brooms listed, Matt McDonald. Rodney Pryor had 26 points in 21 minutes at Bradley, made 6 out of 7 from three-point range. So
yeah,
there have been times where he's had some heat checks where you're thinking that's Carvel out there, the way he's putting up threes in bunches without missing any.
Yeah, I'm looking now at Basketball State. I'm looking at the highest efficiency rating per game, and actually it was the Matt McDonald game at Princeton, which was the highest. Kane Broom was second against New Hampshire, and then Rodney Pryor was third, so I think we nailed the top 3 there.
That's pretty good. How about Marquise Reed against North Carolina? I know that the game wasn't very competitive after the first 5 or so minutes, but yeah. 24 points.
Yeah, that was an eye-opening game. It was only our second game of the year, but what I was excited about if I was a Robert Morris fan is the fact that he could just create off the dribble so easily, but he was doing it against ACC competition. The defenders in North Carolina couldn't stay in front of him. So I mean, if you see that, if you're a Colonial fan, you have to be really excited about his potential.
He really attacks the rim.
Yeah,
Marquise Reed.
Yes, he does. And he's silky smooth behind the arc. I mean, he's got such a beautiful stroke shooting the basketball. He's a multi-talented player. He could score a number of ways.
All right, let's get back. That was a good recap of non-conference play. All right, so we're heading into the league play this weekend. What games are you looking forward to either this weekend or this season, if you had to circle a couple on your calendar?
I mean, I honestly haven't really looked past this weekend, but I'm going to the Sacred Heart game tomorrow, so I'm obviously pumped up for Sacred Heart St. Francis Brooklyn. That's a big game for Sacred Heart. They had a nice non-conference season, but now they're playing one of the favorites at home, and you have to take care of business at home, especially in a league that's full of parity. I'm really excited about that game. I'm also really intrigued Bryant going to LIU Brooklyn. Those two teams, they have been playing well in the month of December. Both of them kind of slumped a little bit at the end there. Bryant lost to Dartmouth, and LIU Brooklyn lost to a really good Hofstra team at home. It'll be kind of interesting to see, which team could pick up a win there and kind of get their momentum going for the rest of the season.
Let's take a look at the slate this weekend. Do I have it? No, I don't even have that one up. But I had a couple that I pulled out. Mount Robert Morris, we got a title rematch coming up on Saturday at 4 p.m. I like Brooklyn at Sacred Heart. I think that's a good game. Yep. And then we have Robert Morris visiting SFU on Monday. So you got back-to-back games for Robert Morris, pretty good ones.
Yeah, definitely. Robert, like we mentioned before, Robert Morris is they've been a little befuddling, trying to figure out, what kind of team, what their true identity is going to be. So they're certainly going to get a tough test early on. They basically have to They play Mount St. Mary's at home, but then they have to go to St. Francis, PA, and then Wagner on the road. Those are 3 tough games to start the conference season.
Absolutely. So before we end this, I got to put you on the spot now. I'm going to need your pick for the regular season champion, and if different, the 2015 NEC tournament champion, Ryan Peters, Pioneer Pride. Who is it?
All right. Well, I shouldn't deviate from my preseason pick. I guess I'll be a little different. My regular season, because of the experience, the continuity, I'm going to pick the Red Flash to win the #1 seed in the NEC tournament. But I'm still going to go with the team that's going to get the NCAA bid. I'm still going to go with St. Francis Brooklyn. They played really well lately. As long as they have good health with Kevin Douglas and Andy Fall, I think they have enough pieces, and Brent Jones and Jalen Cannon, and I really like some of the role guys. I think someone's going to step up out of Antonio Jennifer and Tyreek Jewell. So some of those guys are going to eventually play well for Glen Breaka. So they're my pick to get to the tournament for the first time in team history, program history.
Are we looking at a Francis versus Francis final?
I guess I have to pick that because if St. Francis, Pennsylvania gets the 1 seed, every team has to go to Loretto, PA to play that game, and basically in early March, and everyone knows how tough of a place that is to play. I guess I'm taking a leap of faith and assuming that St. Francis Brooklyn will go in the finals and win that game, and that's happened before. Mount St. Mary's came into the Chuck last year and won. So yeah, I think it'd be a St. Francis final at this point. But as you know, there's so much parity in this league. My opinion could change, 4 games in.
Absolutely. Yes, some team will go 17-1 this year.
Yeah.
All the pundits will be wrong, and whatever. It's just another season. So we're all starting it up this week. Here we go. We start with 20 teams. We finish with 2. This weekend, NEC Front Row has all the games, men and women, 10 games on Saturday, 10 games on Monday, and we will get this going. It's the most exciting time of the year. Non-conference was fun, but this is where, all the marbles here in conference play. So we are finishing up here with Ryan Peters. Thank you so much for joining us again this year. Maybe we will have you on at midpoint, and we can see how your predictions are going. I have to keep track this year. You and all your friends. Everybody's doing predictions. I saw them all over the place. All the bloggers are putting them up now because we're all excited for the start of conference play tomorrow. Ryan Peters, Pioneer at Pioneer_Pride. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you down the road.
Thanks, Ron. It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely talk to you along the way.
All right. Once again, this has been a Geico Google Hangout. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Please visit geico.com. We will see you soon with our next men's basketball Geico Google Hangout. Thanks.